Hi, this is Gilbert S. with the Unnamed Game Co. And I am here with another designer in our industry. I let them introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm Stefan. I'm the one man show behind Dragon Peaks Publishing. I've been doing stuff for the kind of dungeon crawl classics and related systems, mutant crawl classics and weird frontiers, because that's the place where I'm having the most fun, and it's a great community to be a part of the community of creators over there, and just the whole community in general. It's a very welcoming place.
Sounds cool. I'm not as familiar with Dungeon Crawl as I do know of it. I just haven't ever gotten a chance to play the system. I think there's a multitude of game systems I've never gotten to try. I'm still hoping to work my way through.
Oh
Um,
yeah, I know how that is.
Yeah. From what I was seeing, it looks like it's a very throwback to the '80s. In my understanding, like there's a very it's an
Yeah,
is it an '80s
yeah.
game or
It's kind of a throwback to the appendix in literature and which is the stuff you look in the back, the DMG, the Dungeon Master's Guide of you know first edition dungeon Dungeons and Dragons. You'll see Gary Gygax wrote in there basically saying, "Hey, if read these books. These are the books I was reading, and gave me a lot of the thoughts. And some of them are more like, oh yeah, Lord of the Rings. That's kind of an obvious one. But then you'll also have stuff like, hey, read Who Fears the Devil by Manly Wade Wellman, which is a book about a guy who's like, it's vaguely after World War II, and he's just like wandering through the Appalachian Mountains. But there's sorcerers out there, and his guitar he has silver strings on it, and his songs have a bit of magic on it. And, silver's bad for evil things, and it's like, oh, that's where bards came from,
mm,
but you don't get much else from it. Um, so it's a throwback to that, and you're not going to be. It's not a recreation like Labyrinth Lord or Old School Essentials. It's not a recreation. It goes what's it. It's based off of all that old stuff, but it more goes for like what kind of feelings did we create? Let's make those things that just excited us to no end when we were like 13, or whenever you first started playing role playing games. If you've played them for a decade or two or three or just a few years, you might start getting some of it may feel a little bit blasé. Oh boy, we start in the tavern again. How about we start with beastmen have burned down our village, no one is coming to help, any other survivors are in that ruined keep ahead, and they're gonna do some dark ritual to them. I'm just a baker, you're a candlestick maker. We're all probably gonna die, but maybe 25% of us will come through on the other side. Let's go do that.
so Dungeon Crawl class is DCC, right? Dungeon Crawl
Yeah.
class. Yeah, DCC. Uh, so do you know when the game was released then exactly?
In 2012, it's by Goodman Games. They've done some playtesting before that, of course. So if you go back and do some thorough searching, you'll find some like beta testing versions of it before then. But official release in 2012.
Would this game constitute the OS part? It's part of the OSR movement, I'm assuming.
It I don't because it's got some mechanical differences to a lot of the more stringent OSR stuff. I've seen a lot of people say it's OSR adjacent but it definitely came out of that movement, and so like I'd say it's adjacent because um, the stats are different. You have strength, agility, stamina, and you can like those are obvious, but then you have intelligence and then personality, which is kind of charisma and um, and wisdom. But then you also have luck as a stat, which is like a stat that you can actually spend to improve your rolls and influences other things. And like another thing that kind of makes it different from a lot of uh, typical OSR games is spells and how spells are done. Because it's not just I cast Fireball. It's no. You need a roll to cast Fireball, and if you do like the minimal success Fireball, you get like a little Fireball. It's good. It's gonna hurt some enemies. If you get the high level Fireball, that's like gonna be a 100-foot wide Fireball that does a massive amount of damage to everyone in it. At first level, if you max out your magic missile, which is like get a 32 or higher, so you have to do some what is a spell burn, just hurting your own physical stats, which do very slowly recover. Usually not over the course of a single adventure, but you can get up to that 32, and that is you can shoot 10 magic missiles that do like a D, 16 plus your level, and they can hit anything that you are like aware of and go, yeah, I want to kill, you know, King Jeff. He's like 97 miles away from me. I don't see him, but these magic missiles are going to him. You can do that at level 1. Of course, then you're going to be able to accomplish that. You're going to be really weak afterwards from the kind of blood magic you have to do on yourself. And that's when, the conniving judge comes into play and goes, well, now King Jeff may have died, but guess what? Long live the new king, and they've got their own wizard, and they're sending people after you, and you're super weak now. One of the other things is that kind of separates it, and it's why it's Mighty Deeds of Arms, which is, to me, it's what drew me in, because I saw someone describing it online. I was like, they fixed boring fighters who, like, just every turn I swing my sword.
Yeah, I think that's always been the one thing that makes you just go, do you really want to play? Like it's like it feels like it's a necessity to play a fighter. Like there should be. Like, it helps to have a fighter.
Need a tank.
Yeah, we need someone who can absorb. We'll just play the paladin. Yeah, but then we don't want a moralistic like rock that's just gonna be dragging us around everywhere. So okay, we'll play. So the happy medium is we'll play the fighter, and it'll be like hold a shield and then. Yeah. But you're absolutely like you're just like the basic white bread of like of characters, and they say that as like compared to like sourdough and other much more fancy breads. Not a term for
give me that white bread if you're making me a grilled cheese. Yeah, but a lot of the time I want more.
Yeah, if you're having a plain piece of bread, I don't know if I'm really sitting here thinking I would really want a piece of white bread today. I mean, if I'm just, I guess it's good. It's just, it's also boring.
Yeah, but the way they solve that is with Mighty Deeds of Arms, and it's DCC also uses funky dice, which by me I mean your standard set of DCC dice, which they have rules in there for like, hey, so you don't have a D3 and a D5 and a D7, which are just they're fun to roll. Sure you're buying some extra dice, but we're all kind of dice goblins. We have way too many sets of dice, and I love how weird D7s look. It's my favorite. But at like first level, it's, hey warrior, roll a D3, and if you get a 3, well, whatever you get, if you get a 1, a 2, or a 3, you add that to your attack roll to hit and your damage. And if it's a 3, you should have just told me something like, I want to hit this guy into the guy behind him so that he falls over. And if you get a 3, that happens. But that can be like an environmental thing. Like, I want to swing across the room on a chandelier. I want to, take this guy off at a knee. So even if he isn't dead, maybe if I don't take the whole leg off, he's not going to be able to run after us now. I want to disarm him. It gives the person playing the fighter, or the warriors, the actual class title, but it gives the person playing the warrior the ability to be creative with their class. And at first level, it's a D3. You got to roll that 3, so you have a 33% chance. But at third level, you're rolling a D5. At fourth level, you're rolling a D6, but you still only have to get that 3. So your odds of doing that cool, creative, mighty deed of arms goes up. And again, no matter what you roll on there, you're also adding that result to your D20 roll. and for your attack and your weapon's damage roll.
Interesting. I'm trying to imagine in my head. I'm like, oh yeah, that's pretty. Yeah.
I mean, it's just
Uh,
you roll an extra die. That's all it
yeah.
really is. You roll an extra die, and you say, "I'm going to do fancy thing."
Yeah, and as much as I would, we could sit here probably talking about, Dungeon Classic Crawl. This is not about that. This is about you.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
uh,
Well,
it's also, it's nice to talk about other games, about a game system you really love. But let's talk about the games the module. I believe they're modules or that you created
uh,
for a number of different games. One for DCC, and then I had another one here for. Is that
so
part of?
one was for MCC, Mutant Crawl Classics, the post-apocalyptic variant of the game,
Mm-hmm.
and another was for Weird Frontiers, which is basically the weird Western version of that, kind of similar to Deadlands in a lot of way.
Yeah, I was like, oh, there's some Deadlands in here. I was like,
Mm, yeah. And so I did the Mutant Crawl Classics. I'd done some stuff previously that's for free, or pay what you want. A couple adventures in the Gong Farmer's Almanac, which is like a community thing, and then also in a little publication called Quarantine, which was something. It's both those you can find on Drive Through RPG. Drive Through RPG. Quarantine was for all the profits from that went to like COVID relief.
nice.
For people who are struggling, losing their jobs and all that. I don't know if we changed any lives. Not like it was a massive success, but we made some money and we helped some people out. We had some fun doing it too. A lot of it was all people donating their time. But then I tried to actually basically make a little business out of it and see if I can at least earn back the money I'm spending on this hobby every year.
How's
um,
how's it going so far?
Going well enough to do that. Not quitting my day job anytime soon.
Yeah.
But I'm having fun doing it. Also, it's fulfilling work. It is work. It comes with having to file taxes and all that stuff.
Yeah,
So
that's
it's
that.
not all fun creativity.
Yeah, that's our end as well. That's our end as well. Uh,
Yeah,
um,
I did Merchants of the Multiverse for the Mutant Crawl Classic system. That was more of there's an adventure in there, but it was more of a game master toolkit thing of that's a that setting is kind of like a kitchen sink post apocalypse. It's thousands of years in the future. No one knows really why the apocalypse happened. Could have been a few reasons really, and things are very very wacky. It's not a depressing apocalypse. It's a pretty silly one overall.
yeah,
So a lot of that became out of me just running that game for my home group and going, I want more weird like artifacts that I'm gonna describe to my players, and we're gonna have some fun experimenting and them figuring out what it actually is. They can generally figure out what a gun is pretty quickly, but can they figure out the nanobot suppository that essentially gives you an extra death saving throw? Um, and I also made like a bunch of weird merchants. I based one is like based off of Dolly Parton, and it's just like a lady. She goes around, she does gigs, and oh, I got paid in this weird thing. I'll sell it to you. But another is you know uh, essentially Joe Camel.
yeah. That's what I
The
that's that's what I was actually gonna. I was like, and the other one is Joe Camel, right? Because
yeah,
except with a Fez hat, that just gives
yeah,
them away, and every special
and
deal you get a
rides
Fez hat.
a giant flea.
I was looking at this going like, I wouldn't mind playing in this game. I have never played this game, but I think I wouldn't mind playing it. If I'm gonna get to run into a camel that gives away Fez hats, I think I'm in. I think I'm in.
Yeah, so that's the kind of apocalypse it is. You might, buy like some weird gear from Dolly Parton or Joe Camel or the guy who's definitely not Groot from Marvel stuff, and or there's some more kind of deeper cut there's one guy who's like, this is a guy from like this one episode of Star Trek: The Next Generation who pretended to be from the future, but he is a guy from the past who killed a time traveler from the future and stole his stuff. Um,
Yeah, it sounds like it's more of that campy apocalypse from the 80s and the 90s when things were a little bit more uh, weird and fun rather than the current apocalypse movies you see these days, which are all just depressing.
yeah, this is not The Road. This is Thundar the Barbarian.
Yeah, it's nice to see that. I was like, it's nice to have something tongue in cheek for a change. You'd be surprised how often you see games that are just like, can we make something happy? No, no, it's not a thing now. Okay, got
You're
it.
gonna feel things when you play this, and none of them are gonna make you smile.
I
Yeah,
so we probably run around in different circles of the game design community, which is pretty interesting.
probably.
Like this is the one time we're actually like connecting. Like, oh, so you're on the other side of things. I'm over on this side. You're over on that side. How are things on that end? And it's not a bad thing. There's good people on all levels of the community. It's just everybody has. Like I come from more of the indie sphere, and I'm not afraid to say that. I'm more from that that storyteller light RPG style, and you come from the an OSR style, which is not bad.
Yeah.
Like not necessarily OSR, but there's clear like I'm not gonna I don't want to peg you as an OSR designer, but there's clear like you come from another side of things, which is
Yeah,
nice.
the traditional kind of the heritage of D&D. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's
But
nice.
I've played lots of other stuff too, but I don't know. That's where my brain space gets creative, at least in the aspect of the hobby.
And then there's just the design sphere, which is just straight up D&D, all D&D, nothing else, and
Yeah,
that's a design sphere that touches everybody. So like
whether you like it or not.
yeah, there's even if the ND sphere tries to escape it, it's not impossible. It's impossible, and if the OSR sphere tries to escape it, it's impossible. So we're all just sort of orbiting the D&D sphere, and nothing bad. I played D&D for years. I cut my teeth on 3.5, and
You know.
I enjoyed the board game.
Yeah, my first introduction was playing Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic, and then my friend was like, "Hey, I found out this is Dungeons and Dragons, that thing we've heard about but never touched." And they just came out with a new edition, so the 3.0 box set was like half off, and I bought it. Look, come over and let's play it.
My first game was Exalted, and then that's the time I have sort of like a slight like I don't know affinity towards White Wolf on occasions. I'm
Yeah.
like I have a soft spot for White Wolf. I'm not necessarily like a White Wolfer because like White Wolfers are a little bit too melodramatic for my taste.
Yeah, I'm from Texas, so I was too young to be a part of it, but I've known enough people. There was like a big vampire LARP community in Dallas, and I have heard some odd stories.
Yeah, there's a lot of those odd stories, and you know what? I say power to the White Wolf community. They've stuck it through, and they've been stalwart, and it's admirable that D10 life there. Great, but I mean I love White Wolf. I have a soft spot for White Wolf, but not necessarily would call myself a White Wolfer.
I back in the day, I downloaded so many PDFs off the internet of all the vampire stuff. I played vampire some, but it was more just reading the books and going, "Oh my gosh, I love this lore."
It's great, isn't it? Like if you really just read some of the stuff that they've written about the lore of vampire, it's an amazing thing to read. Like werewolves and mages and changeling and like I think someone on the last episode of the podcast was talking about how much they love changeling and how it changed their life and I've heard that from a number of people.
I have like specifically about Changeling. I've heard that. I've also heard things of like I think I think it's James Spawn who's done a lot of writing for a lot of things, like The One Ring and Star Trek and stuff. I heard him talk about and say like he and his wife bonded a lot over Mage the Ascension, and they would have arguments just about like the in-world politics of that game.
Yeah. And And that's sort of like, I think, the legacy that White Wolf gets to have. It's not necessarily the game itself, but sort of the world that they created has like lived on as sort of like, this is the pocket that we understand. And I think I think you can either make a really cool game or you can make a really cool world. And if you can do one or the other and one lasts a long time, I think that's as a designer, that's the one thing you're sort of like
Yeah,
chasing all your time. Like
I
you
think so.
So, what inspired the other game, the one about
The the
holidays and
Brimstone Cradle in the Hills That Hunger, which is
yeah,
a kind of a a double feature adventure module. So yeah, two unconnected but easy to connect adventures for weird frontiers. Um, which that I'll say that game it has totally different classes than DCC, but a lot of there's such good fun in there. Uh, People in almost every playtest I did, someone was like, "I want to play the Hellbilly," who is like part bard, part barbarian, and is powered by magic and magic, and the magic of song and the magic of drinking. Um,
magic and moonshine, pretty much.
yeah, people freaking love that class. So yeah, the Brimstone Cradle is a holiday adventure, and I had I basically I got inspired by it. The Kickstarter happened. I went to a convention. The Kickstarter is still going on. The creator was running a game there, and I played Sailors on the Starless Sea. I went to go to my next game. It had been canceled, and I didn't know what to do. And then I was looking, and I was going, "Oh, hey, Dave Beatty's running a Weird Frontiers game." Or back then it was Dark Trails, and that name got changed because Chaosium has Down Darker Trails. They're Western thing, and all good. But it had a name change after the Kickstarter, and so playing under him was actually my second game of anything that was um, like actually a dungeon crawl classics or any type of that. I left half like on our little bio break in the middle of that game. I went and bought my first set of dice for with all the funky dice that in it. Um, but it was just I'd always loved. I'm from Texas, and one of my earliest, I went to the rodeo as a little kid, and I got really excited about it. I tried to lasso sticks that I stuck in the ground, and was always terrible at that. So I've always loved Western stuff. It was a pretty small town I grew up in. It that eventually stopped being a small town as I got older. Um,
There's something about good
so
westerns. Yeah, I agree with you.
yeah,
Yeah, some great. There's the genre of western when it's done right is a fun thing to watch. I don't know. There's some classic feel to it that you enjoy. That sense of freedom and wild west frontier and the uncertainty of what's gonna happen. You know what eventually happens to the cowboy, but
yeah.
just that sense of like, oh yeah, that's pretty cool.
Well, in all argue, the it's easy to do. D&D is basically a Western. It's not medieval Europe at all.
No.
It's commonly set up. You go to one village and you solve a problem and you defeat the bad guy, and you go to the next village to solve the problem. You know, on down the road, or you get in trouble and have to run from the law. But thank goodness things are so localized that it doesn't take you that long as long as you run in a direction for long enough.
Yeah, I never actually thought about it, but you're right. That Dungeons and Dragons is a western.
Yeah, it's just we put on makeup on our western to make it look like fantasy.
Yeah, I mean, instead of revolvers, you really just have swords and magic. I mean, but
Yeah,
in all essences, it's the formulaic aspect of it is this is a western. You're going into the middle of nowhere with, you're normally going to the middle of nowhere to fight villains that are corrupt and destroying the towns because
yeah.
law does not exist in places far away from the main cities.
Or if it's totally unrelated to the main city, it's a mining camp or something that is not really civilization, or it's the bandit hideout. And occasionally it's you know, the actual just it's a monster out there. Go do a dungeon crawl. But that dungeon crawl can easily be in mines. The Brimstone Cradle is the first one in there, but the second one, the Hills That Hunger, it's got it's my darker one. It's got more inspiration from like The Hills Have Eyes and Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and there's like a room in there that is almost just straight out of the road. Um, but it's basically two areas. One is it's an old mining camp. You have a few locations. You've got these deformed hill folk people that are look like weird versions of your hills that hung or your hills have eyes mutant people, and they're kidnapping people. They're cannibals, of course. There's a fun rumor table in there of maybe you've heard some helpful rumors. Most of them are true. Um, there's also like a separate table for like, hey, roll a d7 and then a d3, and you're gonna see what kind of particular tainted malformation the enemy has. Which I made that, and it really helps. There's not much in the way of NPCs or RP opportunities in that one. I mean, there definitely are, but that helped me, and it's helped some other people who I like had play tested for me give more character to the enemies. Because if your enemies are just popping out and shooting people, whether it be with a bow or a pistol, and then you kill them, it's kind of boring. But if you give them something to say, or you're able to describe like this weird thing of how they look, they feel a lot more real at the game table. Um, that's on tangent. But anyway, I was trying to say, up top you have like a big area. You've got one big house. You've got some smaller places, and then there's like a mining area down below. So it's like essentially you have a mansion, and then you have a small little dungeon crawl. The actual setup of how it is structured as an event is really no different from how you would write a fantasy adventure.
Mm-hmm. So, wait, is this reference to the Brimstone one or the other game?
The other one, the Hills That Hunger,
Yes.
the second adventure in there. Its actual structure is no different than a lot of like typical how you would write, a one shot. Hey, let's go into a dungeon.
Yeah, I think that's something to also. We'll have that link as well underneath here. So if you're listening and you want to download and buy and support all of these games, these modules, feel free to. They'll be down below. Back to the Brimstone.
Yeah, Brimstone Cradle. Yeah, that's the Christmas one. Which there are not many Christmas Western movies. I'll say there are not many good Christmas Western movies. That's a better, more accurate sentence.
How would you, if you were to describe this elevator pitch it? How would you describe the game? How would you describe this module?
It is a baby. Hey, you're all trapped in a cabin. It's Christmas morning. A baby has just been born on Christmas Day, and demons want it. You should probably hold up in this cabin, a la Evil Dead, until dawn, which is the magical time when the demons can't attack this baby anymore. So yeah, its inspirations are the only one that's an actual Western is the Three Godfathers, which is like an old John Wayne movie, which has a pretty similar premise of some criminals find this baby, its mom dies, and these three criminals who are like on the run are like, what do we do with this baby? It's Christmas. But the other inspirations are Evil Dead and Drag Me to Hell, and I like Sam Raimi movies way too much.
Interesting. I was reading this and I was thinking that there's some inspiration from that Tales in the Crypt movie from the 1990s. I don't know if you've ever seen it.
I have, but it's been like 15 years.
It's pretty much like this person holds up in a hotel or something, and demons are trying to get at this artifact that has like the blood of Christ in it or whatever it is. and like that thing can like repel demons from entering the house, but like it's pretty much a bunch of people stuck inside of a house trying to fight off demons. Because and then I think in that movie too there is a baby that is there. So interesting. I was like, I was thinking that that's where it was one of the inspirations, but Drag Me to Hell is actually really good, and I do like Evil Dead. I had a friend who's a hardcore horror fan, and always every time they would talk about anything horror, it'd always be like, so Evil Dead, and I'd be
Yeah.
like, okay, good, I get it. You love Evil Dead. I mean, I don't. I love Evil Dead too, but like, there's other
There's
references.
more than yeah, there's more than that. No, it's I wanted to I started writing that in December 2019. And I was like, man, a one room I had played in a one room like cyberpunk red adventure. Well, not quite one room. I played in the apartment, which is, all in this one apartment building. And I was like, there's not many like one room adventures for like traditional in the traditional like OSR space.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think it's because a lot of that space is focused on exploration, the actual like dungeon crawl or city crawl if you're doing some kind of city based adventure. But a one room adventure is based off of events, so the how you write it is different, and also like how you run it is different because it's all about the pacing of it. So there's a little bit in there at the beginning saying like, hey, you be mindful of the pacing because you have to like get things exciting. Then the fight with these demons ends, and you have to let the players like suss out more of the story that is there and have a breather. And then when they're starting to feel comfortable, threaten them again with something. So I think that one is I don't know. I think it's a little harder to run for like a new, DM because of that. Because it's not as just like, oh yes, well, go to the next room. Let me read the descriptive text for the next room. That's what's in here. Any questions? Okay, the bad guys attack. There isn't that.
Yeah, that's something that I'm new to seeing. I was the events written into the game itself, and it's something that I think some people who are more indie styled people who are listening to this are like, huh, please talk more about this event styled, because for us, for us in the sphere, it's very like rules light, and that's not something we don't necessarily write. We sort of like let things sort of we collaboratively tell the events that would happen rather
Yeah.
than the events being sort of like rewritten. And there's how's it, and there's people that might be like, well, how, isn't that, is it more common to see that this style of gaming, events written into the modules, or I'm not as familiar, so it's good
I
for me to ask.
I don't think it is. I've spent the last couple years mostly playing like DCC stuff, but trying to get in, some Call of Cthulhu and other stuff where I can. But in this sphere, it's mostly like the more along the dungeon crawl lines. The event stuff is not that common, um, but I have seen it. It's done to different levels of success. Um, uh, but yeah, so the way it's written is, okay, the first section is they find the cabin, the baby is born. But I put in there stuff like, hey, if, I guess spoilers, but it's for the very beginning, really. Um, if they're looking into the windows are frosted, so they don't have a good view, and here's what's happening. Describe it like they don't have a good view, though, and things are unclear. And I've seen players, and it's essentially some people like helping a woman give birth, but the woman's lying on the bed screaming. If you don't have much context for that, you can come to some pretty radically different conclusions.
Yeah.
And I've had that happen. And so, but then it's like, all right, We want to keep the players involved. So if they aren't going to like knock or kick in the front door, uh, have the wind blow the front door open. Someone will come to close it and probably see them unless they take other precautions. But I mean, there's stuff built in for them going in different directions. But it's, I try to keep everything, at least, the wind blows the front door open and, there's oh, who are these strangers? We're all kind of surprised moment. Like that feels like straight out of a scary movie.
Yeah.
And then the other events, I've run this adventure in like 3 hours. I've run it in 4 hours, and I just kind of keep a look on the clock, and I would cut material if I needed to cut it, or I would speed things up and go, okay, well, I need, a little more. I need to get this story beat in, and this is a 3 hour time slot instead of a 4 hour, so I don't have that time, that hour I want. So you just kind of you make sure the story comes across more than anything, and I would put in, you know, they can go down to this area, or they can go over to this area if they ask these questions. But if they ask these questions, this person is gonna react differently, and they'll be like, "Oh, I have heart palpitations." Uh,
Now, when you're designing something that has events, you'd have to narrow the sphere of choice. Is that my understanding?
yeah,
Like I can't imagine you have an open sandbox game where you could just kind of go wherever you want to go, without, and then that could just sort of derail everything that's in.
you're yeah. So you're right. And this it's built. There's a hell frost blizzard going on, so the players are kind of pushed into the cabin, and it's difficult to leave the cabin. But there's stuff in there like, hey, do they want to leave? They can absolutely leave. They're gonna have to make fortitude saves because it is so cold, and the blizzard is so bad. They're gonna have to do this to try to get through. But if they find the magical barrier that the demon, the big bad demon has created, they can get through, and they can just leave. The demon will realize and try to stop them, and there it will quickly devolve into a fight. But if they just focus on the barrier, they can absolutely run away
Okay.
and save the baby that way. But it does push them into the cabin. But the thing is, my dirty secret I revealed to the backers already, of the Kickstarter, that the PCs leave the cabin. That never got play tested once because no one ever wanted to leave the cabin in all of the play tests. They're like, no, I want the hide in here until dawn experience, because people don't get that. So that's also the secret to doing something, to doing anything in games. I think, give the players what they want.
Yeah.
Don't just give them everything, but give them that kind of event that they want, that feeling that they want, and make them work to feel that success.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think the things that the things you hear from in gaming circles is, okay, what happens if the players derail the GM or the game master, and then on the opposite side of it, how doesn't it? Do you ever get like the notion of, is this considered railroading? You're sort of pushing them onto a track, and you're forcing them to sort of hit your beats because you kind of need them to, or
It I mean, that totally depends on the players as well. Like, you don't necessarily need a session zero, but if you're to for everything, I've played probably at least 30 games with almost completely random people over the internet over the course of pandemic, and not a session zero amongst all those. But if you're upfront with like, hey, this is what this game is gonna be like, it's gonna be a trapped in a cabin situation. It's going to be a dungeon crawl. It's going to be X or Y. If you're clear about that up front and you say, we're going to have fantasy violence, there's going to be some horror elements like this, and there's going to be a baby that is in mortal and immortal danger, because of the demons that want it. So if you don't want to deal with that, don't sign up. But if that sounds like fun, buy the ticket, take the ride with me.
That makes a lot of sense. I think that's something that a lot of GMs are especially not all a lot of GMs, but there are some GMs that are afraid to communicate. Some things like that, and it's good to say that on like a podcast. It's okay to outline like this is what the adventure is, and then not because if you come in with some expectations, I think that if you're gonna say this is gonna be a free form, we're gonna go explore the world and do whatever we want to do, then that's the game you're gonna get. But if you're gonna be upfront and say, look, this is gonna be a game about being in a cabin and we're gonna protect the baby, it's about a baby and it's about demons trying to get the baby, you'd be like, cool, that's the objective. We're gonna let's get
Yeah,
on board with this notion. But I think it's good to say those things because it's okay to lay down expectations, and there's nothing wrong with that. And if a player doesn't want to be part of that, it's okay to just say, hey, cool, it's just not for you. And I left the game for that. It just the group was going in a different direction than I was, and I felt like they were like, well, you could just adjust, and I was like, well, I mean, I'm kind of going on a different direction, and it's okay for me to leave. We're still friends, and it doesn't hurt
yeah.
anybody's
I
feelings, but I don't want to derail your game because I'm gonna be feeling like I want to do something different or I act differently, and my character doesn't fit. So it's okay for me to
I
walk.
think that is, yeah, a great thing to say. I see too many posts on like Reddit and other sites being like, my group is doing this and I don't like it, and like it's like if you're whatever amount of time it is, if you're doing 2 hour sessions, 4 hour sessions, like that is time in your life you are never going to get back. So don't do it. At, don't do something that should be fun that you know isn't going to be fun for you. Like go play another game or do a totally different hobby if you can't find a game to play during that time. It is absolutely okay to leave a game for any reason. Like you don't have to be made uncomfortable. They don't have to do terrible things. They don't have to be complete murder hobos. It can just be this doesn't seem like a good fit.
Yeah, and
No hard feelings.
my game partner and I always say that like if we're not having fun with what we're doing in this game company, we should stop doing it. And as long as we're having fun, keep going. Let's keep going. Let's keep making
Yeah,
the podcast for me is fun. If this wasn't fun, I wouldn't be doing it. And when it wasn't, and so yeah, I think it's good. I think people need to hear more often that it's okay to put boundaries.
yeah, absolutely. Boundaries are super important, and it's like I'll say, it's yes, it is personal because it's like your own personal, flavor of game that you're trying to get, and if you're not getting that, so like it's personal, but it's not personal in like a bad way. It doesn't mean I go on Twitter by DM bad wrong fun just for the silliness of the name, um, because like they can have their fun and you can have your fun, and perhaps never the twain shall meet, but both of your funds are equally valid as
Yeah,
long as it isn't at the expense of Jimmy, who's in the group, who is the common butt of the jokes, and everyone does mean things to him like in character, and then gaslights him out of character, and it's like, oh no, it was all part of fun. Like that is the bad wrong fun,
yeah.
but
And,
most of the
and
time it's just different flavors.
and if every person on the table is a consenting adult and they all consent to what game they're gonna play together, then I mean that's cool.
Exactly.
I have no qualms with that. Like maybe it's not my type of game. I won't show up to it and don't expect me to. And I won't say nothing about your fun game if you don't say nothing about my fun game because that's just we can be adults about things these days.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, that's the reason I'm happy to talk about a game that maybe I'm not as familiar or my circle of people don't necessarily play, but it's fun to talk about games because games across are fun, and we all have the things we like, and I think dungeon crawl is not I wouldn't mind trying it after talking to you about it today. Like, oh, this sounds like it could be a fun thing to try at some point. Once I get to the other 350,000 other games I have to try to play. um, but yeah, well, I'll add it to the list, or if I find a GM at a convention that's like playing it, I'll be like, oh, I know this, I heard about this from Stefan. And I was like, cool. um,
There's a lot of good discords where you can always find people running. I also like PTRPG Pickup Con, which is just like a free convention. It's like a monthly convention most of the time, except usually around like Christmas it got skipped around this past Christmas. I'm not always like attending it, but it's like a good convention where there's like a lot of indie games. There's more OSR games. There'll even be the occasional 5e game, but there's I don't think not too much of that there. But it's just a good kind of I would not low effort, but low commitment because it's just one con and there's no cost of entry.
Nice.
They do it like every month, so if you miss it, it's always just around the corner.
Let's talk briefly about the art in the books that you have, because you have some pretty cool looking art, and I don't know if you did it yourself or you have an artist you want to plug, but this would be when I see really good art, and I've seen a lot of like things in drafts, so I haven't gotten to see the final art products or near final art products. But hey, while we're on here, since this is a podcast technically derived for designers, let's plug some more.
I got some amazing artists on both of them. So I don't do the art. I can do some coloring. In I will say for designers, I'll also recommend the Affinity suite of products. They are pretty great and they are very cheap, and there's no dumb annual fee like there is with Adobe.
It's great, and there's a number of communities out there that try to donate that to people who want to try to get into the industry or just want help getting stuff. There are plenty of organizations who are always like, hey, if we can raise some money, we're going to give a free copy away to blank. And
I've seen some of those on Twitter of just like, hey, who could this really help? Like, just let me know. We're giving away, a couple copies.
Yeah, so keep an eye out for those. If you really are, if you're an artist, that's a good way for you to get a free copy. If you can't afford it, there are plenty of people on the community who would gladly give away one just to help you out. But yes, continue.
but as far as plugging my artists, because I've loved all of them. Merchants of the Multiverse. That one was all bows and all. He goes by Typical Breakfast on Instagram and Twitter. He's not very active on Twitter. Almost all Instagram for him. I can send you the links later for all these guys so that you can drop them down in the descriptions.
Happy to.
But he did all of the art on there. We had worked for one for quarantine the community thing before, and we started putting together that like. I had my notes from running my campaign, and it was literally Sean Richer, we'd also done a tiny thing with. He does like Craplands and Too Worm, Too Furious, so some DCC and some Troika stuff. And it was just like a random question of like, hey, anyone do anything for Zine Quest? And I was like, I got some writing that I've done that I could polish up, and I think people would really like. But I'm a terrible artist. And Bozo went, I love doing art, and I've got zero writing. So in January we started putting that together to do Zine Quest in February of 2020.
Nice.
And we did it, and it turned out great. And I'm working on a follow-up zine to that, and he's doing a lot of the art for it as well. And I've also I used Davin Klutz. He was the cartography in the Brimstone Cradle and the Hills That Hunger. He also went on to do some of the cartography for the first party adventures for that system as well, for Weird Frontiers. So I showed a draft to Dave Beatty, the guy who created it, and he was like, I love this cartography. Who did this? And is he affordable? I've overspent my Kickstarter budget. And I was like, talk to this man. He is great, and he was able to turn it around really quick too. I also got some stuff by Jacob Fleming, who did in the Tower of the Silver Axe, and I forget his latest one, something Manticore. It's they're two different OSC modules that both did just gangbusters on Kickstarter. And he does, when he has, I guess, some extra time, he does a few art spots for people, and he delivers great stuff too. But the majority of the art, I'll say Boson did a couple pieces in the Hills That Hunger too, but for the Brimstone Cradle, all of the art from that was Diogo Nogueira, who is on Twitter a lot. It's done Dark Streets and Darker Secrets, Cosmic, what is it? Cosmic Blades and Solar Spells, or Cosmic Spells and Solar Blades, which is a great OSR science fantasy, um, you know, system that has just also like one of the best, like that starts without numbers. I think have like the best kind of GM toolkits for randomly generating stuff for like a space game. I really loved his stuff, and he's a great artist and a great writer. He won a freaking Emmy for Halls of the Blood King.
Mm.
So and also just a really really nice guy. Also, I wasn't able to get the art from him in time, but it's like, oh, you got you know not a you got a mild case of COVID and then you broke your foot. All right, well, I sure can't get mad at you for like being a little behind on the art delivery. You're so nice anyway. And but the cover was also done by another Brazilian artist, and I love the cover. It's got like these three people in front of a cabin. It's got a luchador, a gunslinger, and a nun, and the nun is holding the baby. And there's these spider demons coming at them from all sides, and they're kind of framed by the like big antler horns of the big bad demon who's kind of behind it all.
There,
Um,
there are some great artists down in Brazil. The first major project we did was done by a Brazilian artist as well.
yeah,
There's some great artists coming out of Brazil, especially, and they're all over the TTRPG sphere, which is
they are.
so
Yeah,
great.
Brazil has one like really amazing art school, and the reason why you see them a lot in this hobby is well, basically because the exchange rate for the American dollar to the Brazilian currency is really good. So they're often very affordable, even when you're like, I paid Diogo like more than he asked, because I was like, you're super worth it, man. Like, it was also like a part of like the Kickstarter stretch goal. It was just like he had done like a free piece for me once before, and I was kind of like, I gotta pay Diogo back a little bit for doing that. He put some real effort into that one piece. It was amazing, and he did it for nothing. Um, but the cover is Bruno Prosecco. I don't think I actually got around to saying his name. And he is another just amazing Brazilian artist. And I love how he uses colors. I think yeah, I just like his black and white pieces are awesome, but I love how he uses colors.
Nice. Well, we'll have a lot of those links down below, as well as where we can get your games. Now, to wrap us up, because I mean, we already had a. Normally, we ask like. Normally, one thing we always ask is, "Where's your inspirations from?" But I think we've kind of have an idea where your inspirations from. So, what are we? What are we sort of like expecting next? Like, what's the big? To wrap it up, like, what should we be excited for? Where are we heading in the next 5 years or 1 year or whatever it is?
Yeah.
Like,
Uh, I'm
yeah.
hoping to kickstart basically Merchants of the Multiverse to tentative title is Mysteries of the Multiverse. I swear I didn't keep with the multiverse thing just because that word is like hot right now. It actually fit for the concept I was going for. Um, but that'll be fun. That'll have like a MCC adventure. It'll have like a lot of stuff for like sandboxing and hex crawling in this funky post apocalypse. I'm also slowly working on a bigger project, which my working title is Academia Crawl Classics, which will be a not very dungeon crawl focused, but it'll be using that system, and it'll be all about being in a magical school. Though it's going to be a lot. If you die, you are posthumously awarded your graduation certificate, and that might happen a lot more than you initially think. So it's not that it's not some nice Harry Potter wrap things up with a bow. One person might die every other school year. It's I don't know. The if you see the headmaster do his announcements, it's probably because he's appeared in the Great Hall, draining all the blood from all the meat products that you're eating, and he's a sentient blood cloud giving announcements. So very weird and also kind of wacky academic world.
That sounds like a fantastic thing. We will probably feature or at least talk about it on our Tuesday podcast. We have now moved to Tuesday podcast for everybody out there. Jordan, Zone Fighter, and myself are talking about games on Tuesdays. And if you are a small indie press person listening to this and want to feature a new upcoming product in May, come and send us information. We'd love to have it on our show. This or actually at this stage, this will be June. Yeah, this interview is going to go out in May, so this will likely go. So if you're wanting to feature something in June, come talk to us. Sorry about that. We do record these in advance. Besides that, if you really like these interviews, please hit like and subscribe down below. If you want to be on our show to talk to us about your games and about being in the community or just anything in general, we're happy to have you. This has been Gilbert S. of the Unnamed Game Co., and I have been here with
Stefan Surratt of Dragon Peak Publishing.
Thank you for listening. Check out all the cool stuff down below. See all the artists and download some of this cool products. Try Mutant Classic Crawl and Dungeon Classic Crawl, and yeah. if you want to find Stefan.
You got it.
You can find them at their Twitter, I'm assuming, which will also be down below.
Yep.
All right. Have a good one, everybody. And